You learn a lot through failure, and you've got this massive chip on your shoulder. Be careful. Be prepared to humble up and take some time whenever you hit those failures and be honest with yourself. And it's amazing to think back on that. And I was 26 years old and district manager and thought, man, I'm killing it. And from there to here even is a lifetime worth of journeys.
Hey there, dental economist. If you're a dentist owner or a leader within a dental business thinking about growing production, case acceptance, patient and staff satisfaction, positive outcomes, and everything else that comes with running a dental business, then you're a dental economist, and you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Dental Economist Show. We're meeting at the intersection of profit and purpose as I sit down with dental leaders who share their stories about dentistry, business, and growth. Welcome back to the Dental Economist Show with your host, me, Mike Huffaker. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting a distinguished figure in the dental industry, Joshua Gwinn, co-founder of Optimize Practice Alliance. Optimize focuses on empowering dental professionals by clarifying their growth visions, securing investments, and protecting their legacies through a combination of consulting services and practice management support. Josh Gwynn's career spans from the U.S. Navy to leading operational roles across numerous dental practices, including the role of CEO at Hero Practice Services. He brings a wealth of experience in strategic cultural development and performance optimization. Josh, excited to have you on the show today. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Mike. It's an absolute privilege, man. I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Yeah, me too. It's been great to get an opportunity to meet you at some of the events over the past year. Really excited to kind of hear your story and a little bit more about your journey. And you have a pretty interesting background. I would love to hear a little bit about how you went from military to dental to ultimately founding your own organization with Optimize.
I was thinking, and I hear this from my kids more than anyone else, like, how did you get there? Was that a plan? Which, hilariously, I don't think very few of us not dentists grow up and say, I'm going to be in dental when I grow up. Maybe the dentists do, but I don't know the rest of us. Interestingly, from a small town in Arkansas, blended family, 7 brothers and sisters, single mom, really scrappy, just really trying to find our way. My family history is coal miners in Southern Illinois and institutional poverty and, kind of being ground up by the machine over time and watching this happen for generations and generations. And I was blessed. My mom is one of the hardest working individuals I've ever known. She's my hero. She's someone I look up to, if nothing else, for her dedication and focus and work ethic and consistency. And that's not something that even I can, bring to bear these days, and I rarely see it anymore. She retired this year, 35 years at the same hospital, and went to night school to get an LPN license while working like at the corner market to support us and develop and build us, take us out of this consistent Section 8 housing situation, bought a house, 900 and some square feet, raised us all up in it, just wild. And at the end of all that, as my brothers and, all of us were growing up, it was time for me about 17 years old. I was like, you could kind of see the future in that small town. And, I had worked on a farm as a kid and, really had these constant, jobs at Subway sandwiches. And, I was a produce manager at the Big Star Grocery, which tells you this kind of small town, little Big Star. But, coming out of there, it was like 17. I'm like, the future here is sad. It's not going to be a win. So what do I do? And this is just the state of the world in that situation, you join the military. At the time, college wasn't a great option for me. And it was, so I joined the U.S. Navy. The first time I flew on an airplane was to boot camp. So I had never been on an airplane. I'd never, other than riding in my dad's semi, I hadn't traveled outside the state. It was like bouncing up and down the highway system. I'd seen that, but I hadn't seen much else, right? And so I went to boot camp with this level of ignorance about the broader world and what was available. I had this quote unquote poor kid ceiling over my head that I didn't know it existed, but I also could feel that it was oppressive. It was around me all the time. Those who this resonates with, you'll know what I mean. I mean, when you come from those places, the world is not your oyster. It's a very closed off space, right? So I go to boot camp, go through 6 years in the U.S. Navy, and in those 6 years realized that I had a voice and most people were not willing to work as hard as I was, period. And that was a revelation. Once you see that and you realize you can weaponize your work ethic and want to and, kind of need to succeed, it changes everything. So I spent those 6 years, on US Navy warships, reading and learning, developing leadership skills. I was privileged to go to the US Navy Leadership Academy and read my first self-help books, the Seven Irrefutable, with the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, or, just and started to feed kind of that inner want to with that sort of thing. So that was the first 6 years. And the first time I realized that there was potential for me to lead at a high level. By 19 years old, I was leading a group of 30 men. By, 23, when I got out, I was leading about 60 and had, won a couple Naval Achievement Medals and really done some special things. So that was the beginning of the beginning. Spent like 3 years in the music business, retail. And this was during the Napster days. So Napster wiped our company from 350 locations to 30 in my 2 years there. That was fun, watching the whole thing crumble under its own weight. It was called Value Music Concepts. We had 4 retail street brands and we were mall-based music stores. And again, we went from 350 roughly to like 30 in 2 years. It was a bloodbath. And again, there's a lot of learning that goes into closing down locations and terminating people's employment and, having to develop a plan for the future. And then I was chosen to go into a managerial training program for a company at the time they had 65 eyeglass optical locations. And so I started as a vision tech, making like $9 an hour. And within a year, I was the national trainer for all 65 locations, was running multi-units. And then we got purchased by a company called National Vision that owns America's Best. They own about 300 Walmart locations, all the military-based opticals. All in all, now they're traded on the exchange as EYE. They have 1,800 locations. At the time, we had like 450. But this was the first place I ever went that was structured culturally. They were so consistent. We opened up 35 de novos in a year. It was really an interesting learning on institutionalizing and then scaling cultural development. Did that for 4 years, and then I got pulled into Great Expressions to take over 65 locations in Great Expressions as a regional. Then Internet Service Corp, I ended up running all of operations for Internet. It was about 202 locations. And then Hero came calling and they needed a CEO. They were in really dire straits at the time. And it was a full turnaround rebuild, moved me to Denver. And that was probably the most fun I had in my whole career. I mean, it was a wild build. It was insane to grow as fast as we did in about 2.5 years, and then have COVID come in and wipe everything out a bit. And then because it was highly, highly medicated, government payer focused, the recovery was extended compared to traditional dentistry pretty dramatically. So from that point on, I met my partner, Dr. Jack B. Ramian. Dr. Jack owns 6 high-performing clinics in the Los Angeles County area. And he was running the best privately held business I'd ever seen. Culturally, he had it locked in, systems, processes. He had tuned Medicaid to over 35% profitability. We purchased and built those into Hero, and then he and I decided we wanted to go and put together Optimize.
That's a great story. And there's so much there that can be unpacked. That's a lot of action. So I'm curious if we take a step back to like your childhood and growing up, when you're in an environment like that and, you have that poor ceiling, like you talk about, and you have this amazing example in your mother who you watch just giving everything that she has to make a better future for you all. Does it still feel unfair at that moment that the fact that she's pouring so much in, yet it is still such a struggle? Does that cause any type of like resentment towards the system itself when you're just thinking like, this isn't how it should be?
Great question. It's not one I've gotten before. And here's the truth. I remember when I was in 3rd grade, resentment towards the system for me wasn't so much about it's unfair that there are haves and have-nots and the haves treat the have-nots like crap. I mean, yeah, I had that chip for sure. But the chip that just ate me up was when the have-nots turned on each other and pretended like somehow their only angle was to put down other people who didn't have things so that they could be better or feel better. And I started to recognize the weakness in that mentality very early. In 3rd grade, I went to get my first pair of glasses and a lady set my mom down and I had a very heavy prescription. And she said, "How could you not know he's blind as a bat? Shame on you." And I wanted to fight that lady. I mean, I was 10 years old and like you have you don't have a clue who you're talking to. You sound silly. And man, so we get in the car to leave, and this is at a federally qualified health center. It's where you go when you're in that situation, especially in very rural. We lived in a very rural area of Arkansas, very rural. And when we got in the car, my mom starts crying right away. And she said, Josh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. And the amount of frustration I felt there and negativity from that was beyond the pale. And that was a lot of the fuel, especially when I got to Hero and we were treating kids in those same situations. And now we have some FQHC businesses that we also work in and optimize. And the whole point for me is to be able to let the teammates know. And typically these teammates are from the same neighborhood, right? They're treating their brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts, uncles, etc., to let them know that we've all felt that shame or that social stigma. And they have the opportunity every day with every interaction, every time they come into contact with someone, to brighten their day and be the best thing that happened that day. And instead of shame, to let them know, educate them, give them the healthcare that they deserve, help them understand there is a path, there is a better way. And one of my favorite things is to look at those teammates and tell them my story and then say, why not you? I chose one thing differently, and that was that I was going to do whatever it took. I was going to work. I was going to grind. I was going to take every opportunity. I was going to say yes a lot. 40 hours is meaningless. I was going to work until it was done, not until I felt like time was up. And that changed everything for me. So having that chip was a big, big deal. But then also having people around me, and there's good people all over the land, I mean, everywhere, who will give you an opportunity if you just step up and work for it. It's that simple. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got was the easiest way to get someone to help you is to ask for it. But our pride holds us back. Seriously, very few people are like, no, it doesn't matter. Our pride holds us down, and we're silly if we pretend like everyone doesn't already know. Like, we wear all of our emotions most of the time on our sleeves. Everyone sees us. The people who are bright enough to look, they're seeing us for who we are anyway. Man, just go get what you want. Stop all the subterfuge, nonsense, and games and walls and everything. That was never beneficial for me. And when I did, I always looked foolish. When I would just go after what I wanted and ask for help, I usually got it.
One more on the haves and have-nots. If you are in an environment where you're a have-not, is it harder to dream? Is it where you don't even have the notion that you could be something more or that it could be different? Like, is that kind of entire hope, I guess? Do you lose some of that hope? And is that part of what makes it so challenging for people to change their circumstances?
I don't think so. I don't think you lose the ability to hope and dream, because this is America. For me, I will tell you that the first person, and this is so wild, but the first person who made me believe that I could do anything was Michael Jordan. He was the very first person at that age. I was, in 1990, I was 11 years old. He starts dominating the league in 91. I'm 12. I'm a little baller myself. I'm out on the court every single day, practicing my crossover because I'm going to jump from the free throw line and dunk and all the other things I did not accomplish. Let's be clear. But it was the first time I had seen someone who came from a relatively stable, lower middle class or middle class background who ended up taking over the world, frankly, changing the face of sports marketing and the NBA and, right? So the ability to hope and dream, I think, is always there. What actually happens that is significant and is along those same lines is that the other people around you fail so often that they take their toxic beliefs and their own failures and they start to press them down upon you. And what I mean by that is I've had countless people tell me, you'll never make it. You're going to die here like the rest of us. You're going to end up, name your calamity. It's all going to happen to you. And it takes a lot of strength and the support of someone like my mom to say, yeah, we don't listen to them. Those are the haters. Those are the fools. We let the fools be foolish. We let the haters hate, and we go and do what we need to do so that we can be better than, and not better than people, better than ourselves. She's the one who taught me that the competition was 1v1 and I'm the only player. It's just me versus me. You either do it or you don't. And they didn't. That's why they're so bitter. That's why they're so hateful. So I think it is this societal situation where, when you're trying to pull yourself out of a situation like that, there's so much negativity and so much failure around you that the mentality of those people, you have to be so militant and so aggressively against that to push it away, to stay on track and get what you want. So that's really what I think is the bigger part of that.
It's a lot of wisdom right there. Now, as a parent now yourself, you had mentioned working hard and outworking. And this is, I think it's a truth that most people accept, even if they don't agree that it has to be that way. It's that to achieve a certain level of success, you really have to work your ass off. And that ends up needing to be what you have to do to get to where you want to go. When you hear discussions about work-life balance or about this type of balance or about, you have other elements of your life separate and apart from your work. You have family, you have your spiritual life, you have your health. How do you think about that? How do you communicate with your children how they should think about it and approach it?
When they're young, we establish routines very aggressively. And the routines that we're focused on in our house, and this is just ours, but physical. So they're either in a sport practicing or they have something physical to do every day. I mean, through Christmas break, all my kids have been riding Peloton, like it or hate it, sometimes both, but that's what we do at our house. And then music is a big thing at our house. So you have to practice your instrument. I don't care what your instrument is. We have all of them at my house. We have, literally 50 to 75 instruments at my house right now, pro grade, full on recording studio. You can do whatever you want, but you got to do something. And then there's the either reading or homework portion, the chores portion, whatever your chores are in the house. And then you can do what you want. You have the freedom to organize yourself in the free time that you have left once your priorities are taken care of. And again, it's a battle all the time, constantly a battle. And again, without the discipline that we bring, they're not going to bring it for sure until they get a little older and a little more consistent and you start to build that. So that's really how we focused on it. One of the benefits for me and for my kids, I think when they're older, they'll think it's a benefit, is that shit. Like I said, I carry it with me and I teach them, what it was like coming up. And you mentioned earlier about, losing hope and those kind of things. I used to really think that I had grown up poor. That's not true. When I was in the military and I left, I ended up in the Dominican Republic. Then I saw poverty. Then I saw kids eating out of literal garbage dumps and living in the dump. And it ripped my whole life completely changed. I was 19 years old, 18 years old. It blew me away. I remember coming back to the States and sitting down in McDonald's, eating a whatever, Egg McMuffin and thinking, my God, I can get an Egg McMuffin anytime I want. That kid would do backflips for an Egg McMuffin. They would have went wild. So understanding perspective and making sure for me, I love my kids, man. I hug them, I kiss them, I tell them I love them every single day. I make sure they know that. But I'm also a hard ass and they know that too. And they know that we're not playing and you're not going to see the benefit of this for a very, very, very long time. Now, I say all that to be, the output of that is I now have a kid in college and, at Trinity in Dublin, Ireland, who gets to go to Trinity. It's mind blowing. I have another kid who's going into, special warfare in the US military and, they've seen the path and they fought every step of the way not to do those things. Right. But now they're aging into a place where it's like, okay, Dad, I get it. And one of our key tenets in our house is that it's easy to be great these days because most people don't even try. They're not even going to try. So if you're competing, if you're in the game, it's like, do you remember the White Mamba, the basketball player? People teasing all the time. You're the worst player ever. I'll destroy you. And once he retired, he was like, okay, I'll take on anybody at any point, but we're filming it. And they'd bring out, whoever thought they were the best in there. And he would just dominate, destroy them. And they're offended by it. One kid bet him his shoes. I bet you my Jordans that I can beat you. And he's like, okay. So at 11-0, this is a 17-year-old kid. He's like, I'm taking those Jordans. And he's like, you're going to take my shoes? Yeah. You were stupid enough to make that bet. And then he looked him in the face and he said, I'm closer to Michael Jordan than you are to me. The worst player in the league is closer to Jordan than we are to him. And that's 100% the truth. And that's why I say, as long as you're in the game, you're doing great. Now, what you do once you're in the game is what's going to make you, fit onto the pantheon. But just be in the game because most people aren't. Most people aren't even trying.
Yeah. Now, do you also force NFL team loyalty upon your children?
Well, you already know the answer to that. Since you walked up and saw me like dying watching the Broncos, the answer is yes. So my youngest was my first girl. I have 4 kids. My youngest, 6 years old. My daughter was she came out the womb with a Bronco cheerleader outfit on, and somebody said cheerleader outfit. And I'm like, you're right. She's getting a jersey. I don't even know what I was thinking. That was that was my bad. I'm forcing gender roles. I don't force gender roles. I do force team loyalty, though. Yeah. Now, all tried and true Bronco fans, as you know, this is a funny aside. We lived in 7 states in 13 years before we moved to Colorado. And Denver was always where we were going to go. And we were always going there so we could watch Bronco games. And that's not a joke, as silly as that seems. Once we came to our first Bronco game, we were like, this place is amazing. Why would we go anywhere else? This is the game. So, yeah, that was the plan forever, and it worked out.
I love that. And then one more aside, what is your musical instrument of choice?
Electric guitar. I mean, I can play guitar, bass, any kind of guitar, bass, drums, whatever you want, sing a little bit. But electric guitar, lead, classic rock, blues is kind of where I live. But my 22-year-old is a heavy metal machine. So I've had to learn, a lot of Avenged Sevenfold, System of a Down. And I mean, we all, I already knew Metallica, but I consider them classic rock, right? That's in my genre. But I've played in various rock bands, and it's something I've done pretty much, for a really long time. And it's such a different headspace than Excel and PowerPoint and this that I love it. It absolutely, I can zone out in a whole other world. And there's nothing like being on stage, even in front of 20 drunks at a cowboy bar, and having them like freak out over a guitar solo. I'm like, yeah, I did that.
So it's probably like meditation in a sense. It's like, it's a form of disconnect. Absolutely. Have you ever riffed with Ray Caruso? Maybe we should set something up at like the next Dicoma and get a little jam session going on.
Hilariously, we talk about it constantly. I've not, but he lives 15 minutes from me. And we talk about it every time. He's like, do you want to be my guitar player? Yes, totally. But we've never made it happen. But we're a good friend, great guy. I've seen his band multiple times. Really, really fun dude for sure. Big fan.
That's fun. So some business conversation at Optimize and just, I've done some reading of different things that you've read or written, and culture is a key cornerstone component from your perspective to practices being successful or business being successful in general. So maybe just at a high level, like I love culture. It's probably one of my favorite topics of discussion. I don't think that there are good businesses really with bad culture. I think it's really hard to be a good business with a bad culture. But what is your definition, and why do you believe that culture is such a superpower for successful businesses?
Yeah, I mean, definition, who you are and what you believe, how you behave, that's culture. And it is down to the daily how we behave. I've seen so many leaders who say they give you this beautiful, vibrant, flowery culture speech. And in the worst cases, they're cursing and throwing things at their employees and acting insane. And you can't PR your way out of being an asshole. You just can't. Everyone knows it over. Eventually, it all gets out there. I worked in a situation I won't name, but this CEO taught me so much about what not to do as a leader that, I mean, I would have paid for the master class, but man, he was more than happy to be that guy, to throw things at the executive team, to scream. We once had him come into a room and yell at 30 leaders, and this is a 300 office DSO. And on that leadership team, we had 8 future CEOs. 8 of us went on to run DSOs. It was the craziest, most talented team that I've ever seen melted down in melt down. And the reason it melted down, things like this person walks into a room, throws 1,000 sheets of paper in the air, they all go flying everywhere, and screams, "You MFers have lost me my bonus for the last time." And I giggled out loud. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. You thought this was about your bonus. That's so telling. This has nothing to do with you, right? My kids do not eat off your bonus. So helping people understand that culture is not about what you say you are. It's about what you are. It's about doing some really hard things sometimes that aren't the best business decisions. Sometimes the cultural decision, if the business can support it, first start, you have to have a business, but if the business can support it, you might make a bad business decision because it proves you are who you say you are. And you don't have to do that every time. You do have to explain what you're thinking. You have to be a clear communicator. You have to be open. You have to be honest about what you're trying to accomplish. You have to make sure that the people around you are aligned. And you have to limit the amount of rumor mill that's happening within your organization at all times. For me, that's the most important and most impactful piece. And whenever I'm on panels or I get questions, like you mentioned, Dicom, or any of those meetings, you get a lot of questions of, well, Josh, we hear, what should I do? And I'm like, well, who are you? How do I recruit more dentists? Why would they want to work for you? Like, explain that to me. Like, give me that answer. And if you can, awesome. If you can't, start there. Like, figure that out. Like, why would anyone want to work for you? Not because you're the awesomest person who's ever, nobody's down for that. So anyway, that's always the beginning of it for me is who are you actually? Is that what you're espousing out into the world? I've watched a company build a culture by saying we are going to be the most profitable and sell for the highest multiple and dominate. Great. If that's really who you are, you're going to attract those people. There are certain personality types that are going to come along with that. You're going to have to deal with some things, but in every type of culture, on the other side of it at Hero, man, we had an amazing culture that we had developed by literally teaching who the real boss is. And it damn sure ain't me or the doctors or anyone who works in that company. Our real boss was every 5 and 6 year old who walked in the door and their caregivers. Full stop. Once we taught that to the team and they understood and ingested it, we grew by 35% organically the first year. And it was that trend hit in 4 months. The minute they realized who the boss was and that I wasn't playing, I would say, I'm not your boss. I'm the guy who holds you accountable when you don't take care of the boss. Or I'm the guy who celebrates you and promotes you because you're so good at taking care of the boss. And they're like, does he mean it? Well, when I put on scrubs and I go in the office and I take out the trash and I flip rooms and I clean for you, you realize, oh my God, he totally means it. And wow, okay. So all I have to do is take care of that kid. That's all you got to do. Amazing. Company blew up at that point in a very positive way. So you see the effects of culture very quickly. I don't believe you can build a company that dominates without it.
Yeah, it was a telling part of that story at Hero. And the first thing I thought when you said, hey, the culture is taking care of the 5 and 6 year olds those are the bosses and their caregivers. But the first thing that popped in my head is, yeah, but you have to allow for that to happen. So that there can be this clash between the words or views that are coming out from a culture. And then all of a sudden, the next time somebody gets chastised for maybe spending a little bit too much in the office to take care of that patient, then that starts to erode. Like, is that actually true? Are they the boss? Because, you just told me what I did was wrong, but I took care of them. Did you have instances where you almost had to check yourself because it might not have seemed at the time to be the most responsible use of company funds, or maybe somebody issued a refund that you didn't agree with or something else. But if that's really the perspective that you take, you kind of really have to hold yourself back as a leadership team sometimes.
100% yes. And you actually nailed it. Your examples are spot on. One of the things that I was the most proud of in that team was rule number 1, take care of the boss. If you did something in the vein of taking care of the boss, it can't be wrong. We might do it differently next time. It can't be wrong though. It's not wrong. There is no wrong. And from myself down to the practice managers and you name it, everyone understood that. We were very clear. And not only clear, we would come in, me, myself, I had a COO who is one of the best people persons in we call him the doctor whisperer because he's such a kind, thoughtful operator and could build incredibly useful teams. And he and I used to say, we have one voice. There's now just 2 people using it. And then we brought more people on board. And we got to where there were 4 or 5 of us who I trusted to say whatever they needed to say on my behalf. You speak on behalf of the CEO, ready, go. When there's that much clarity and understanding, the game changes. Now, you talked about holding yourself back. One of the things that has to happen in that situation is I have to, as the leader, understand that it's not about me. It's not about my ego. It's not about how I would do it. I'm not the only one with good ideas. We say best idea wins. What that means is I get all the ideas. Now, I might be the shot caller, but the best idea wins. And if I pick the wrong best idea, I'm the one who has to say, my bad, pivot. Best idea number 2, ready, go. And again, for me, the benefit I have is that I've been wrong a ton, so many times. And humility for me is not about failure, or humility for me, or finding those moments of humility, or where I really feel like I'm learning a lesson is when I do something that's against the values or against the culture. I know it more than anybody. It eats me alive and I have to own it. And there are times where I have to do that because the business says you have to do something that is against your culture. I have to start that conversation by saying, hey guys, and I know this goes against what we believe, but the business has established this is the pattern. This is what we have to do. And I need you guys to know that this is one of the hardest decisions I have to make as a leader. But if I don't, we won't have a culture to protect. So I'm protecting the culture by protecting the business. And getting that established with people is so clear and so important. But really having that leadership team who understands it and then coaching constantly, you would get more coaching. And coaching doesn't have to be negative. It just has to be, right? It has to happen. You would get more coaching from me by chewing out that person who took care of the boss than you would by what they did to make the boss happy or to do whatever. Because long term, those things parlay. And we also know that it takes a lifetime to build trust and it takes a moment to lose it. So how you behave in those moments is way more important than what you say all the time. I mean, your huddle, if you have a huddle statement every day that you read and then you act completely differently every time you're tested, nobody's buying your nonsense. It's just what it is. Foolishness.
Have to build the credibility. Now, you talked about a master class of what not to do with the past experience. You've known a lot of CEOs now. You know a lot of CEOs in this space. Anybody that you would point to as the opposite of that, as like a master class, and this is really somebody who gets it, where you have a lot of respect, maybe you've learned a lot from them, either through working with them directly or just through their actions from afar?
Yeah, there's a couple people. One inside of dental you hear a lot about is Steve Built and what Steve's done. And I don't have a close personal relationship with Steve. I know him. We were on the board of the ADSO together, but I've watched from afar to see how he's handled, the ups and the downs. For those of you guys who know his story, he's had both. He's had some, moonshot ups and then been taken out by the same PE firm that paid a boatload to buy it and then brought back. And absolutely not hilarious because there's so much pain and humanity that goes along with that. But what strikes me about Steve and the way that he manages his team and the way that he develops people is there is accountability inside the organization. There's full accountability. Everyone is expected to execute at the highest level. At the same time, he's very open and very humble about all the ups and downs. And to get on stage at the ADSO or Dykema and tell the story of being fired by the PE company and all those things, that's a challenge. And that is living through your authenticity and your values and who you really are. So in dentistry, I see him doing a good job. I see Brad Hughes doing a great job on social media, and I know some of his teammates. I know that he's doing really well. I don't know him that well either. Ray, I know very closely. And Ray has hired some of my former team from Hero, which I always tell him, if you get a chance, get as many as you can. They already get it. They already know, right? They're ready to go. I think he does a great job. And then off the radar, the president of a company called Specialty Smile Partners is my former COO, Mark Musso. And Mark, again, is an absolute wizard with people. He is so honest and brutal. And he is one of the few humans that makes such great connections that I've seen him look doctors in the eye and say, I'm very disappointed in your behavior. And they melt down and cry. And it's like, man, it's like having your dad tell you that he's disappointed because Mark puts so much into people. And I think he does an incredible job. And he's not on the radar. He's not out flexing and flossing all over the internet or whatever. He's just steadily building a really excellent pediatric ortho company right now. So doing a great job, explosive growth and sort of off the radar. So we're very, very close. I consider him a brother. And to have someone like that on my team to learn from and be taught by him, as well as hopefully teach him a thing or two, was a real huge blessing in my career development. Now, outside of dentistry, there was a gentleman named Reed Foss at National Vision. So National Vision is a company I mentioned. They're now 1,800 eyeglass locations, America's Best, Eyeglass World. They're huge. Reed came into that company, and it's similar to Steve. He came into the company, and they had about 250 Walmart leases, and they were all coming due, and Walmart was kicking them out because they were doing a terrible job. So he came in, renegotiated that package, and was able to keep them for a couple of years while he went and bought America's Best and Eyeglass World. Eyeglass World is where I was at. We had 65 locations. By the time the Walmart leases came up, we had almost 600 stores, and he had completely bulletproofed the company if Walmart tapped out. The cool thing that he did was he was able to convince Walmart and prove that he could make them more money by him running them. So they gave him more stores, which is, a boon. Anytime Walmart, you got them in your pocket, that's a win. Second to that, and well, actually, I think the reason that worked was culturally, Reed was one of the most consistent, thoughtful cultural leaders I've ever seen. A lot of what I learned from Reed, just watching. And then when I became a district manager with that company, he and I would be on the treadmill at 4:30, 4:45 in the morning a lot together. And, he was always offering books and always offering learning and always open for a conversation. And, I had the privilege of next to him on a treadmill, like, hey, Reed, so how'd you come up? How did you think about it? And hilariously, we couldn't be more different. He was Harvard. He was, had all the stuff. But he told me a story. He said, I came out of Harvard and got my MBA, and then I went to work and eventually ended up at this company in England running an optical company of, 80 stores or whatever. And he's like, and I melted it down to the ground in about 2 years. We went completely bankrupt, had to sell everything off. And he's like, oh yeah. Because me and this guy, Des, that worked for us too. And I was like, you guys did what? And he's like, well, here's the thing. You learn a lot through failure, and you've got this massive chip on your shoulder. Be careful. Be prepared to humble up and take some time whenever you hit those failures and be honest with yourself. And, it's amazing to think back on that. And, I was 26 years old and district manager and thought, man, I'm killing it. And from there to here even is a lifetime worth of journeys, right? But to have someone like that who is that open and that honest and just like, oh man, you're going to get punched directly in the face 30 times. And you're working with PE. Oh, stand by. They're going to punch you for no reason. And by the way, every VP on their team's trying to make his name off of you. And it's like, oh, great. So those really watching some of those guys, knowing Mark and then working with Reed, that's really been the master class on how to do it right, I think, is a big part of that.
Those are fantastic examples. Coincidentally, I just recorded an episode with Brad Hughes, and that was super enjoyable. When I started the podcast, my kind of like North Star guest was always Steve Bilt, also Pat Bauer I'd love to have on the show. And I've got Steve Bilt is going to join in a couple weeks. So I'm beyond excited about that. Yeah. And then Ray and Mark, I had an opportunity to meet maybe a year and a half ago, right when he started, I believe. And that company was rebranded from Simco. Every interaction is you leave going like, this is really a good human. Like you can feel it, which is great.
Again, there's no subterfuge. There's no bull. There's no Mark is Mark is Mark is Mark. And some people hide behind I am who I am. And that's like code word for I'm an ass. That's not Mark at all. I am who I am. I'm not going to change for you. No, you're just a jerk is what you are. Mark is a genuinely good dude who he doesn't pull punches. Why would he pull punches? He's just telling you reality. You know what I mean? And like that type of leadership, that authenticity, that openness, that's what I respect the most. It's, be who you say you are. And if you can't, don't say you're that thing. Like, why are you even talking like that? Again, it would be like me saying I can dunk from a free throw line. Come on, we all know better. I'm 230 pounds. I ain't dunking donuts about the most I'm dunking. So just getting, having that authenticity is a big part of leadership and parlays to culture. It's people know. We pretend as leaders sometimes that only the educated or the smart people get it. Humans get it. People get it. Your team gets it. You're a fool if you think you're fooling anyone. That's the fool's errand in a nutshell.
You've seen a lot. You have this wealth of experience, kind of been there, done that. So when you speak to groups and leaders that you're working with Optimize, you and Dr. Jack obviously have the credibility that comes along with that. Who do you seek to work with? And who is, for lack of a better term, your ideal customer profile? Somebody that is a great fit for what you do and that there was a mutual benefit that's received through the engagement.
There's really a few constituencies that we focus on in our business, in the dental support portion of our business. And it's really provider support. We do work a little bit outside of dental too, but in the dental focus space, it's really entrepreneurial focused dentists who are trying to grow and develop their practices. So we have a portion of our consulting clients who are single practice owners who are just struggling to get the systems in place to make that thing work. There is a small portion of that. And that's that's easy stuff for us. We've done this a lot. We can put those things in place pretty quickly. As long as you actually want to execute, you can have some tremendous growth. Where we really can be impactful is multi-unit. People say emerging DSO class. That's the people who can really see some huge benefit and changes. One of our favorite clients who's quickly becoming a business partners with us is a gentleman out of Virginia. When we met him, he had 9 locations. He's up to 11, I think, or 12 now. But within 6 months, we had grown that business from 10 to 15 million in top line revenue and added a couple million in EBITDA, which funded this next phase of growth. And it's through systematizing leadership and culture. So mission, vision, values, systematized leadership meetings, development, discipline, strategic planning. We live in a 90-day world. We prep every 90, we flip every quarter. Then we build out your action plans for the quarter and then have weekly touch base updates for the team to make sure that the team's executing along those lines. And a lot of times in those businesses, and this one specifically, the owner and his wife they had led the business for a long time, but the people around them, they had known literally, one of them had been christened with the doctor. So these were family, friends, people that it's really hard to hold accountable as you're growing and developing. So that's where we come in. We provide that accountability. And I have no issue in that sense of sitting down with the person in finance and saying, hey, help me understand. You committed to doing this. You didn't do it. Where are we? When can we expect that? And the tone changes, not in a negative way, in an accountable way. Because offline, I can have conversations like, hey, you've known Doc forever. I know you're not trying to not do this. Help me understand. Like, what can we do to support you so you can get this done? Because I'm telling you, that's a building block. And I need that to be able to put these other 10 in place. And these other 10 are worth $1 million. What are you doing? Help me understand, right? Once you get to that level of coaching and development, those emerging DSO businesses change rapidly. Those are the most beneficial partners we have. And then again, we can bring them to the table for financing rounds or introduce them to private equity. Last year, we took 6 practices, put them together as a DSOs, about 20 million top line. We helped transition them to private equity. I stepped in as the CEO to get them through the transition. We built out the full back end of the DSO and then transitioned them to a new CEO and took a little equity and a board seat. And those are great deals that are win-win for us too. And then finally, we have a business academy for owners in Colorado Springs. We do this academy quarterly. And it's a group of, right now, it's about 15 to 18 hitters. And as far as owner docs, I'd say about half multi-units. One has 12, one has 7. We've got a bunch with 2, 3. And then some single units who are trying to grow and develop. That academy is, one, the network, all the things that you get, your tribe, your network, your sense of place and space and peace. That part's awesome. But the meat of it is, we're bringing in industry veterans to teach. The Eric Romans of the world teach for us, Ali Aramshian, Brian Kaleau. We're bringing in the top names to be faculty so that as a 2-3 office group, you get to hear from the head of Dykema on how to structure your legal, or the dentist on how to social media. Those things don't exist. There's a lot of groups that are doing teaching and coaching. The way we're doing it, I think, is so differentiated right now that that's probably the most exciting thing we do. It's not the most profitable, but it's the most fun, man. Like getting those groups together, because again, there's 20 of us in a room, and you've got myself, you've got Dr. Jack, Mark comes and visits just to be there. And they're like, wait, he does what? Like, he runs 60 or 70 offices. It's fine. It's normal, guys. And they're like, who are you people? And you know this, when you get in those rooms and it's good people generating ideas, things change. And you get like this momentum that comes off that academy is pretty special. Eric Nuss is leading the academy for us. He used to lead the Dental Business Institute for Henry Schein. So, we brought in the top talent we could find. And that's really the biggest benefit that our dental clients come away with, is just this learning, this vision of what's real. And then we're sprinkling in a whole bunch of AI training, because if you're not already ahead, you're so far behind, you might never catch up. So we're trying to get people to like baseline. Hey, what is ChatGPT? What's an LLM? Let's help you with that. Let's give you tools today, and then I'll teach you why they work. and then we'll show you what else is possible. So that's really the two ways on the Optimize side with the academy and consulting that we're really having some benefit. We have our ortho practice group and a few partnerships that we also do, but the biggest thing is the consulting and really teaching, education, developing relational stuff. That's what we love.
That's awesome. I really appreciate the time. I honestly feel like we could have made this a Joe Rogan style 2 or 3 hour conversation, because I got a whole bunch of questions we didn't even get to. So we'll have to do this again at some point, but really appreciated it. It was great to have you on. If people want to find you, where do they find you?
LinkedIn, Instagram at Josh Gwinn CEO, LinkedIn. You can hit me there. Optimizeps.com, www.optimizeps.com. That's our website. Any of those things, we'll get right back to you. And, if you need some help, we have teammates across all spectrums of dentistry, orthodontics, etc., leadership, development, culture, social media, training. We kind of have a full spectrum of consultants and teammates that can support, that are experts in their particular space. So feel free to reach out. We love working with good people. Our blanket rule is no brilliant ass. If you're smarter than everybody else, you're too smart for us. Otherwise, we would love to have you.
All right. Thank you so much. Take care.
Appreciate you. It's been great. Thanks.
The Dental Economist Show is brought to you by Planet DDS, home of Dental OS. To find out more about how cloud-based dental software by Planet DDS helps unleash dentists and their staff to focus on patient care, visit www.planetdds.com. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes by following wherever you listen to podcasts. And thank you for listening.